Chapter 2. It had been raining nonstop for weeks, ever since the day they returned back to Sacramento it seemed. Shawn had just turned 3 years old the previous week before them coming back. Ravina's father Ronald was more relieved than angry with her. His oldest child returned with his grandson in good health. Ravina, now 18 years old and had become overwhelmed as a single mother. She gladly accepted all the offers from family members to watch Shawn. Her father was the most consistent, picking Shawn up every day or at least every other day. Shawn enjoyed spending time with his grandfather. He was the main male role model in his life at that time. Christmas had shown up fast. Under the Christmas tree were stacks and stacks of gifts, each one stamped to Shawn. Shawn was overjoyed and could not wait for Christmas Day. In just 2 more days, his grandfather showed up that evening with more present for his grandson. Ravina sat on the couch as her father walked into his mother's house, arms full of wrapped presents. Ravina and Shawn were living at Ravina's grandmother's house. Her grandmother Eunice was in her early 70s but spry in all accounts. She tended her garden daily and loved to watch people's court and eat peanut brittle. Her biggest hobby of all though was smoking cigarettes, Virginia Slims. She didn't really smoke them. She lit it and it would dangle from her mouth while the ash grew and grew, then she'd light another. Ravina's father placed the presents on the floor next to the Christmas tree. Ravina said, "Oh, I got gifts now," but her father retorted, "These are for Shawn." Ravina was agitated at the response. She felt everyone was spoiling Shawn and showed her no attention since they returned. Her father sensed her frustrations and told her he got something special for her. That response warmed her heart and she smiled. Christmas Day had finally arrived and Shawn was beyond excited. He and Ravina woke up early to Grandma Eunice making breakfast. The aroma of bacon and eggs made the stomach in the house growl in desire. Shawn sat to the table and his great-grandmother put a plate of waffles in front of him with 2 slices of bacon and a cup of hand-squeezed orange juice. After demolishing his breakfast, Shawn sprang from the table, eager to open his gifts. Ravina was still eating but elected to cater to the now ecstatic Shawn. She replied okay, getting up from the table. Shawn, jolted with energy, ran into the living room. He began tearing through present after present: Hot Wheels, fire truck, dump truck, racetrack, etch and sketch, Legos, and so on and so on. After tear through nearly 20 gifts, Shawn was getting exhausted. He still had 5 gifts left to open. He asked his mom for help. She said okay, but you are opening that big one by yourself. Shawn replied, okay. Ravina opened the next 4 presents, which turned out to be just clothes. Shawn wasn't hardly excited about them. Then it was time to open the final gift. It was the biggest box under the tree. Shawn tore through the wrapping paper fast as he could, clearing it all in less than a minute. He stood back and looked at the box. It was a train set. He jumped for joy and said it was the best gift. A tingle of satisfaction came over Ravina, for this was the one gift she got for him, and he thought it was the best. They instantly began to take the train set out of its box. Shawn wanted to put it all together right then. He didn't want to play with any of his other toys. For the rest of Christmas Day, Shawn and Ravina sat at the kitchen table putting the train set together, piece by piece. Shawn was yawning, falling asleep by the time they finally got it all together. Ravina carried him to their bed and laid him down. Kissing his forehead, she whispering Merry Christmas before clicking on his Winnie the Pooh night light, and turned the room light off. Before she closed the room door, she stared at him with a deep gaze. She thought to herself, his dad had only seen him one time. Letting out a sigh, she closed the door. The next day she decided she was going to take Shawn to see his dad. The rain had finally stopped after weeks of downpour. Ravina got Shawn dressed after he ate his breakfast, excited for him to see his father. Ravina's grandmother Eunice asked where they were heading. Ravina replied, I'm taking Shawn to see his dad. The confidence in her voice let her elderly grandmother know she was telling the truth. They set off on their journey. Ravina didn't have a car, so they were walking. Just as they began walking down the street, Ravina's dad was pulling up. He rolled the window to his Mark 12 Lincoln down, asking, where are you going? Ravina responded, by your house actually. Her dad motioned for her to get in and unlocked the doors. She buckled Shawn in the back seat, saying out loud, we need to get him a car seat. Ravina got in and they drove off. When they arrived at her father's house, he said he had some errands to run and he'll be back soon. Ravina exited the car, ignoring what her father was saying, and getting Shawn out of the back seat. She started walking down the street, not even going into her father's house. He questioned her demeanor and asked where she was going. She replied to take Shawn to his dad. Shawn's dad was a young man, the same age as Ravina. They were actually good friends at one point, going to the same schools and church most all their lives. His grandmother lived just down the block from Ravina's dad's house. She believed if she went there to his grandmother's house, she could get a hold of him some kind of way. They sat in the living room of Shawn's great-grandmother on his father's side. His great-grandmother admired his energy and continuously bombarded him with compliments. He's so cut, he's so handsome, he's so adorable. Ravina was growing anxious after she said he looks like his dad. She then asked if she knew how to contact him, so he could see his son. His grandmother said she'll call his mom's house. He's usually there. As the elderly woman walked toward the kitchen where her house phone was located, Ravina grew impatient, grabbing Shawn and leaving. A few days later, Ravina was walking with Shawn when a white sedan rolled by, slowing and then pulling over. A skinny man exited the car while it was still running. It was Shawn's dad. When Ravina saw him and anger filled her gut, she stood in front of Shawn as if to block view of him from his father. As he got closer, Ravina warned him to stay back away from them in a threatening tone. He retorted, "Why are you playing with me like that? I want to see my son," he blurted in a sincere voice. Ravina laughed, with a doubtful giggle. Shawn's father tried to approach and reach for his son when Ravina swung, nearly hitting him in the face. He then digressed with disbelief that his son was right there and he couldn't even hug him or say hi. He got back in his car and drove away. Months had passed and summer was approaching. Over the past few months, Ravina had acquired a job, and as a gift her father bought her a brand new car. He also promised to help her get her own apartment. With Ravina working now, Shawn was spending most of his time with his great-grandmother Eunice and great-grandfather Willie. Willie and Eunice were Ravina's grandparents. They weren't together anymore but share a property together, Willie living in one house and Eunice living just next door. Shawn would be between both houses. He enjoyed his great-grandmother's time the most. He would help water her plants, help her break down the pomegranates for her homemade jams, and she's always made sure he had his own box of C's candy, peanut brittle. Shawn's great-grandfather, Willie, on the other hand, was an all-work, no-play type of gentleman. He was old school and had nearly 20 kids and countless grand and great-grandchildren. He was retired from 3 different professions and had been operating as a farmer/fisherman for over 5 decades. Every time Grandpa Willie had Shawn around, he put him to work, whether it was organizing the tool drawers or sweeping the shop. When Shawn was just 4 years of age, great-grandfather Willie taught him to measure and cut wood. One thing he did love the most about hanging out with great-grandpa Willie was they went fishing at least 2 times every week faithfully. Ravina was in the living room at her grandmother's house. Out of nowhere she doubled over, grabbing her stomach. "Ouch, ooh, ooh, ooh," she groaned. Her Uncle Howard was just walking in the house. In concern asked if she was okay. She groaned more, saying, "I think I need to go to the hospital." Without hesitating, Uncle Howard grabbed her arm and helped her up, ushering her to the car. He then came back in and told Shawn to come too. 5 minutes into the drive, Ravina's groans became louder and more consistent. It was apparently something was seriously wrong. Her uncle turned on his survivor mode and began speeding and driving without regard for the law. They made it to the hospital, and nurses rushed Ravina to the emergency room. Shawn was confused and scared. He was worried about his mom. Him and his great-uncle sat in the waiting room for word on what was happening. About an hour later, a nurse came and got them both, escorting them into a room, where Ravina laid in a hospital bed fast asleep. Still, Shawn didn't know what to make of the events. He stood next to the bed and just held his mother's hand.